Welcome to Jesus Retold, Episode 1. I am your host, Bethany Brown, bringing you stories about some of your favorite Bible characters and perhaps not so favorable tales. Today, we're going to be going over the life of Samson and just specifically looking at Samson and his personal relationships. Joining me today is my co-host. She is a stand-up comic, actress, writer, and producer. Please welcome Nelia Linick.
Hi.
All right. Did I really just do that? I did.
Okay. Really good.
All right. So Nelia, I know that you grew up around Bible stories and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about Samson?
Of course, heard a lot about him in Sunday school and some sermons, but I just my biggest memory of Samson is that he was this big, strong man that broke these pillars. And I do remember that. I do remember as a kid wondering why the girl that he was with, I assumed was his wife, right? Mm-hmm. That she betrayed him because they tell us that she allowed his enemies to cut off his hair, right?
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid being that's mean. I just never added up.
Yeah.
Child brain. But I just remember him being this big, strong guy.
Okay, yeah. So
Amazing.
Samson, most people have heard of Samson and then Delilah, the woman who took him down. The way that I grew up and I heard the story of Samson was always they kind of related him to a brutish athlete that just had this issue with women, and that's why his life went so south. So the message was kind of
I never knew. I never heard that
always it was Samson would be a modern day athlete and his prostitutes, and they sort of just always, the way I heard the story told was just boiled down to this really one dimensional person. And then when you actually read the story of Samson, it's such a compelling story, and that depiction of him personally I think couldn't be further from the truth of who he actually was.
Probably is a bit unfair too.
Very unfair. Yeah, really not true. So
I'm excited to hear what you have to share.
All right, so guys, I'm just going to give you a quick summary of Samson, and again, we're just looking at one snapshot of him. Feel free to do your own research. He was the judge of Israel. He was known as a great warrior, but we're just going to sort of look at him and the direction that his personal relationships took today. So just to sort of summarize Samson for you guys, Samson was set apart from birth. He was a Nazarite, which meant that he, couldn't drink wine. He wasn't allowed to be around dead corpses, and he couldn't cut his hair. And these were specific restrictions that were put on him from God, because he was raising him up to be set apart from his people and to be able to protect them. So he had different sort of rules growing up. One day, he is in town, and he sees a Philistine woman who would have been of a people group that would have been seen as enemies to his people group, the Israelites. And it's love at first sight. He falls madly in love with her.
Aww.
He rushes home. He tells his parents that he wants to marry her. And his parents you can't marry this woman who's of our enemies. And the Bible says, but little did they know that it was actually from God. That God had ordained them to be together. So he ends up marrying her, and during their 7-day wedding festival or feast.
What a wedding.
A wedding, 7 days.
Imagine that hangover. Okay.
I know, right?
Well, he's not drinking, so
I
he's
bet
good.
you can imagine that hangover. Yeah. I'm sure she was able to do whatever she wanted, so
Drink all the wine.
Drink all the wine and then some. So basically, Samson comes up with this riddle, and he gives it to who is soon to be his new wife's father and his men, and he says to them, if you figure out this riddle, then I will give you 30 beautiful garments and something else. And but if not, then you owe me 30 beautiful garments, right?
Yeah.
So little did Samson know, but the Philistines came to his soon-to-be wife and said, if you don't get us the answer to this riddle, we're going to burn you and your father at the stake. So, first thing...
Why?
I mean, listen.
That escalated so fast.
People didn't mess around back then. People didn't like getting
They're like,
punked.
who's this guy trying to punk us? That's it.
Right.
It's over.
It's over. Because they can't figure out what this riddle is. So, like, one thing, just like ladies, guys, like, communication is really key,
You guys might have heard of that word. It's a pretty big one.
It's a pretty big one. So instead of saying to Samson, hey, my life's being threatened over this riddle, she just weeps for 7 days. And Samson just feels so bad that she's like, you don't love me, So he's like, okay, like, I'll tell you the answer. Just don't tell your dad. So dramatic. So of course, what does she do?
I need to dramatize my stuff a little bit more. Maybe that's why I'm single. Not dramatic enough.
I know, like Nelia, you should just be like weeping for days
all the time,
and then maybe a man will marry you. Stop being so.
If not for nothing else, just to make me
so
stop
happy.
crying.
I can't take the joy that you just exude. All right.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Bringing it back. So Samson does tell his soon-to-be wife. She tells her dad. The dad tells the men. Samson owes them 30 garments and like something else. I don't remember. And Samson's so pissed that he just goes and he takes 30 garments off of 30 different Philistine men in town. Just give me your clothes, or Samson could do because he was the strongest guy around. So he gives him those 30 garments, and he's so upset because he feels so betrayed by his new wife that Samson pieces out for a little bit. And we don't know how long he's gone for. But what we do know is that he comes back with a peace offering, a little goat, right? To make things right with his new wife. He's like, calm down. He thought things through. Maybe she was like, they were going to burn me. Who knows? And, situation is kind of extreme. And
poor girl, dude.
Poor girl.
Like,
so Samson goes...
Her life is threatened, then the husband leaves.
The husband leaves because she betrayed him. And meanwhile, so he comes back with his goat, and he's going to go into the room that would have been her bedroom, or her, like, quarters in the home. And her dad is like, oh, I wouldn't go in there if I were you. And Samson's like, why not? I'm like here to make things right with my lady. We're here to have some like makeup, sex, and get this thing rolling. And Samson's who he thinks is his father-in-law is like, well, while you were gone, I sort of married her off to your best friend. So he's actually in there with her. But Samson, don't worry. I have a solution. Her younger sister, who's way hotter. Like, you think she was hot? Check out the younger one. You can have her. This is true. You can find it. Read the story of Samson. It's my abbreviated version.
There's so much going on here. There's so much sadness and wrongness.
So much.
I can't.
So, Samson, being the cool-headed fellow that he has shown to be thus far.
No, he really pauses to think.
He really pauses to think this one through. Smokes some weed, chills out a little bit. No, that's not what Samson does. Samson does not take the younger sister. Samson is so hurt and betrayed that he takes foxes, ties them together, lights their tails on fire, and sets them loose through the Philistines, his enemies' crops.
I have to say, I do like that Samson takes care of business. He's like, wait, you did what to me?
Yeah, he doesn't.
You took my girl and just gave her to someone else?
And not only that, but the best man at my wedding.
Oh, no.
It doesn't say it was his best friend. His best man.
I'm not saying that I would do the same if I were Samson. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I do feel like it was a little bit of like there's a little bit of like projection or displacement. Is that what you'd call that? Like
of his anger.
quarrel should be with his friend and the father.
Yeah, he did take it out on innocent people, basically.
He needed to burn all of the Philistines' food supply
all the
for
food
the
supply
year.
for the year of men and women and everyone else. Yeah.
So, long story short, the Philistines then burn his first wife and father at the stake.
These people on fire. There's a theme. I see it.
Here, like, so that happens, and then, and only then, does the Bible say that Samson slept with a prostitute. Which,
well, I think he's just at his wit's end. I'm not excusing him. I'm not saying go do it, but I think there's like such a hopelessness.
Well, yeah,
He's heartbroken.
I think that any human being can understand that if you'd been betrayed by your wife, you came back to make things right, she was married off to one of your best friends, and then her and her dad was burned at the stake, that quite possibly, maybe, you'd be in a really low place.
Yeah, I mean, we go through like a simple, like, kind of mutual breakup, and you're just like, that's it! I hate everything and everyone! Get away! I'm not going outside today!
Right,
And,
when you go to a bar, you make some really bad decisions that you shouldn't have made. So I think that, like, in this case, for me personally, not that I'm excusing it, but I think it's more than understandable how Samson found himself there.
Yes, we can definitely understand and be like, yeah.
Where he is. And then from that point, after that, it says that he then falls in love with another Philistine woman named Delilah, whom Samson never marries. They live together, we don't know how long, but based on how the text is written, for quite some time. And the text says that he loved her, but the text never says that she loved him in turn. And one of the things, from the
unrequited love after all he's been through.
All right, so now
this build up.
He's been real traumatized, and so now he's settling. He's settling with a woman who doesn't love him. He's settling with a woman whom he doesn't have to marry. We don't really know what her background is. There's no mention of a father or brothers, and especially in the culture of that time, to just be living with someone probably was definitely not okay or cool. And not only that, but the Philistines come to her and they say, if you betray Samson, we'll give you 110 shekels of silver. And so the entire relationship that she's with him, she's trying to figure out the secret to his strength. Because remember, he was this powerful warrior and the Philistines couldn't defeat him. And I should have mentioned this, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the story, but Samson's strength is in his hair. That's the secret to his strength. And so at first it's sort of a game to Samson. He's like, oh, if you tie me up in these certain types of ropes, so she ties him up and the Philistines come and he just kills them all and it's this game. But then after a while, he gets really, really worn down.
I'd be so annoyed if I were him.
Yeah.
Like, he has to constantly battle with them because she keeps setting him up.
Right. Right. And I really think that
not cool, Delilah. Not cool, man.
I really think that he thought it must have been a game. Because finally, eventually, it says that she, nagged his soul to death. To the point where he couldn't take it, so...
I'm laughing because I can imagine.
I can totally see just being like, all right, I'm so done.
I'm so done with this.
So done with this. So then he tells her the secret of his strength. And while he's sleeping, she puts his head in his lap. And she cuts off his hair. And the Philistines come and they gouge his eyes out. And they put him in a dungeon. And they give her 110 shekels of silver.
It hurts right here hearing it.
It's really hard. It's really tough. And before we tell you the ending of the story of Samson, I kind of want to pause here and just talk about, Nelia, listening to this story where this great warrior, set apart, undefeated, came to this place where he settled so much for someone who so didn't love him. And not only that, but showed, no matter what she said or did, her true intentions were shown to him again and again, and he
she's
still took it.
pretty transparent.
Yeah.
In her like lack of loyalty, right, to him. I don't know. I think to me, like, it shows that, and it serves as a reminder that there's like a real danger in losing hope. Like, hopelessness is actually very dangerous. Hopelessness is not just, oh, you don't feel like being productive a certain day, right? Like, oh, you don't have hope for that day. No, I think like in life, when we lose hope, what happens is our standards drop. And then the very thing we didn't want to do, or the very situation or relationship, right, or path, whatever that is, we didn't want to go back to, or we moved away from, that caused us that hopelessness, we repeat. We just kind of fall back into the same pattern. And it's just like, just lose situation. You can't get out of it. And in his example in Samson's life, unfortunately, it was devastating. The results of like him being comfortable in his hopelessness were literally devastating. He lost, like, they gouged out his eyes. They didn't just cut off his hair and take his strength, right? They could have just imprisoned him and kept cutting his hair every week. Just giving him a buzz cut here and there. But no, they gouged out his eyes. Like, they really wanted to punish him.
Yeah.
That's really rough.
Yeah, I think too, like, I don't know about you, but I have so many friends, and even, myself before, where I remember I was in a situation once that I got into with a guy because I'd been like so hurt and disappointed before, and I literally was like, if you stay with this person, like, no matter what he says, he kept showing me that his intentions were not good for me. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, if I stay with this person, I will not accomplish any of my dreams. Like, it felt life and death to me. And so I had to leave this person, even though it, like, all of his bad intentions for me were sugar-coated in, like, the nicest looking package you could ever imagine. I mean, like, said the right things, like, all of this stuff, but there was something that always felt deep down inside. I was like, this person isn't for me. There was something that was just so unsettling, and I knew that if I stayed with him, that not only would I be settling, but that I would be sacrificing my calling. And I feel like I just relate so much to Samson, because he did everything right the first time, and it didn't work out. And how many people did everything right in their first marriage, or thought that they had, like, checked all of the boxes, and then were betrayed or devastated, or someone died or something horrible happened, and you're like, well, I'm never gonna find that again. So I'm just gonna go over here. I'm gonna settle for this, without realizing that what you sacrifice when you settle is never ever worth it.
Oh, it's always you. I think as human, it's so human nature to think that sacrificing is like somehow helping us to not lose more, but it actually is the quite opposite, because when you sacrifice, you lose way more. What you sacrifice is always way more than what you actually get.
Well, I think,
like, when you settle, you sacrifice so much good.
Right, meaning when you settle.
Like, when you settle, you sacrifice.
If you're sacrificing for the right things, it'll get you.
Yeah, I meant when you settle. So when you settle, when you're settling, you are sacrificing a lot of what would have been great for you. Yeah. Like, you are basically, like, when you're settling, you're giving up so much that you don't even realize. Yeah. Because when people settle, they think they're like, oh, I mean, I'm not saying people. Okay, so just in general, how I would see settling, right? It's like, settling is me not wanting to fight or wait for something worthwhile. Yes. And that, to us, it sounds like, oh, I'm just deciding to not put in as much effort, right? That's what it looks like and sounds like. But what it actually is like me not putting in effort to fight for what I want and what I know that I need, and deserve, actually just completely sabotages any true chance of happiness.
Right. Yeah, and there's this, I think there's
So
also
it's
this,
devastating.
it's a false sense of security.
Absolutely.
And maybe like one thing that I kind of was just considering, like hypothetically thinking about, is perhaps there's a sense of comfort for Samson in the fact that Delilah did show her true colors, because he was so blindsided the first couple of times. Because I know that is how I felt. I was like, I know who you really are, but because I was so blindsided over here, there was almost this comfort in the fact where it was like, well, I actually kind of know who you really are. So like I actually know like what to look out for.
So it's like there's comfort in the predictability.
Right. In like being like, well, like this
like,
person
you're
I thought
toxic,
would never
but at
do
least
this.
I know your toxic
At least I know you're
patterns.
toxic. Yeah, like okay, I can deal with this bullshit because
so
I
wrong.
actually know like
That's
what
so
this
sad.
is.
Yeah.
And I think that where the like also
I've done that before too. It's just like as we're talking about it, I'm thinking of examples, and that's real devastating.
It's right, yeah. And I think too, like to kind of go along with that, I think that when you do, like Samson was an undefeated, like very brave warrior who was like taken out by like some chick who probably didn't have a family for like a couple of bucks. And it's like, I think that when you think that maybe you are stronger than someone else, you don't see them as a threat. And I think so often the people that end up taking you out very often are not the people who are actually your match in a battle. It's the person that you think isn't your match.
That ends up
and you just see that. You see that so often throughout literature and history and in actual people's lives. And so it isn't the worthy warrior that takes you out. It's rarely someone who's actually worthy of you. And that's what happened to Samson. That's why it's such a dagger, because this woman she thought 110 shekels of silver was worth more than the greatest warrior. Like if you research him, he's the greatest warrior that ever lived in history. And you kind of see this happen to a lot of great men, that they're taken out by something that is so weak, and where it's saying your worth is so nothing to me. Like we see that with Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers for 20 shekels of silver. You see that with Jesus, was sold for 30 shekels of silver by his family. One of his best friends who walked with him and knew him said, "This is how much my time with you has meant."
Yeah.
And there's nothing to me personally that I can see as more of a stab or insulting to who you are than that. And I think that the biggest lesson from this story is that you have to fight for you, and you have to surround yourself with people who are for you and not against you.
Yeah.
Period.
I agree with that.
You can't. There is no wiggle room in that area.
And I think also it's so important to surround yourself. I think it's in Proverbs where it talks about having wise counsel, like making sure you're surrounded by people who you trust to go for advice to, that they will keep it real with you in a sense. Like they're not going to tell you only what they think you want to hear. Like they're not just gonna just agree with you all the time. And I think at least in my experience and some of my friendships, I've had to learn that the hard way. That there's some people I would go to, and I mean, quite frankly, their advice sucked. It was awful advice.
Right.
And then I would hear it, and I'm like, yes, in this situation, naturally speaking, this is what I want to hear. But I, knowing myself, know that that's not what I need to be doing.
Right.
And so, so then eventually I would go to other different friends and mentors for advice. But if we're not careful, we can quickly just surround ourselves with so many yes men, right? And nothing's changing in our lives. We just keep keep living in that like that hopelessness. It just becomes comfortable because the only people what we have in that small circle are people who are not challenging us, who don't. I think there's real danger of having someone close to you that doesn't just not want the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even think about you. They're with you all the time, but they don't actually consider what is best for you.
Right.
They're honestly always only thinking what's best for them. They like hear you talking about your life and they just kind of blah, blah, and then in one ear out the other, let's go out to dinner or whatever, right? But they're not actually critically playing out scenarios of your life and what they could look like, right?
Right.
They don't even put in that energy. I think those people are the most dangerous. Those people are the most dangerous. And so like actually having wise counsel, having mentors and friends that you can go to that you know can most of the time tell you things that will hurt. Because truth hurts.
Yeah, I have friends like that.
When you go to friends who tell you things
I'm like, I know
that
I'm not going to like this, but
Yeah.
I know it's what I need to hear.
You've done that for me, and I'm sure I've done that for you, which I think shows great character, and I'm honestly like so grateful for your friendship because it's not it's not like we always disagree with each other. No, but we really speak the truth, and truth is hard. To speak the truth, you have to have courage. So you have to be courageous to speak it.
So true.
For yourself and for somebody else.
Right.
It's really, really hard. But that's what pretty much I believe like essentially makes or breaks your life and your happiness and your destiny and living a life that produces something.
Right.
That's not just life lived for you.
Yeah, I think it's in the Proverbs too where it says like woe to the man who falls down and doesn't have anyone to actually
that's good.
lift him up. It's like if you fall down, everyone you're with is already down, and there's nobody to get anybody.
They just look at you like, oh
It's
yeah, welcome
like,
down here.
You joined us down here. Hey, I've been waiting for you.
They're like, I told you this would happen.
I'm the one that actually tripped you. Sorry.
Just been bored down here in this misery. Needed somebody to do it.
Exactly. And what's that saying? I know it's like so oversaid, but I think it's so true. Show me who your 5 best friends are, and I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years.
That's so good.
And and especially I think when it comes to romantic relationships. I mean, how true is that?
That is so
I
true.
mean, and just to bring it back, there is some hope.
We have other friends.
No, this is my only friend. I have one friend, this girl right here. Actually, no, my other friends who bought this are so funny. That's not true. We both have other friends. We promise. I swear. They're going to comment on this when we put it on YouTube.
They'll be...
See? Prove it. Show you.
I never text me that. Oh, I'm joking.
Yeah. Should we finish the story of Samson? Should we let you guys know what ends up happening? About our friendship. We're not friends. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. She actually gave me this. This is her fault. My broken hand over here. It's not. I got it in a bar fight.
Defending me.
Defending her, obviously. Defending her honor, because those are the type of friends that you need. Okay, so Samson, Samson's eyes gouged out, his hair is cut, he's put down in this dungeon. He, did something in the dungeon, I forget, some type of, pushing around this thing to make green, I think.
Yeah, they put him to work.
Yeah, they put him to work, and then the Bible says that the Samson's hair grew back, which I always thought to myself, if this guy's strength is in his hair, wouldn't you have a designated person that would be
I always thought that
trimming it on a regular basis? But no.
Oversight.
So they eventually bring Samson up to mock him in front of 3,000 people at this huge party. And Samson has always been pretty cunning, as you've seen with his riddles and other things that he was up to if you read the story. So Samson he's faking he's super weak, and he's asking the guy if you will prop him up against 2 pillars, And so the guy's like, oh yeah, sure. It's like, I'm too weak to stand. So he props him up against the pillars, and Samson, with his hands, breaks the pillars, and the entire building crumbles, and he kills 3,000 Philistines that day, and also himself. He ends up dying and passing away. He takes his own life, basically. But I think that the redemption in that is that they were going to mock him, and instead, in front of their very eyes, he destroyed the very people who took his strength from him.
Yeah.
And so that's, I know it's sad, it's like hard to be like, oh, that's really redeeming. But there is redemption in that for, I think, Samson personally. Like, he went out with a bang. He went out with a big, like,
well, yeah,
F you,
he definitely took revenge on them in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, he made sure that they got theirs.
We all hope that Delilah was there. It's not recorded, but like, I'm always like, I hope she was there.
Yeah, for sure. Hope she was there.
What were you saying?
That girl, so many things I'm trying not to say. I'm sad. I'm sad that he ended up dying with them. I wish there was a way for him to escape. But he sees the opportunity, which I respect that. He was like, this, I don't know when they'll bring me back up here. I don't want to spend he must have been thinking this, by the way. This is not scripture, it's just me thinking what he would have been thinking. Mm-hmm. What I would have been thinking if I were in his position. Like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life working for my enemies, you know, who I hate because they gouged out my eyes, took my freedom from me. And so he had the opportunity to kind of to pay them back and end it all.
Yeah.
But that also just kind of ties back to, dang, should have asked one of his bros before he got with Delilah, you know? Like, what's up? What do you guys think?
One of his friends that was going to betray him? I
don't know. Yeah, it sounds like he didn't have great friends.
I think though, okay.
Maybe his dad? Was his dad around?
You know that, like, saying, I don't know if it's a saying, guys, actually, but you know that idea of like, you know, the more that you make it or the more powerful that you become, the more haters that you have. I think for a guy like Samson, who like literally could not be defeated, I'm sure his friends were all jealous of him. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that, you know, people, while they admired him, they probably also...
He had no equal, yeah.
They were like probably envious and jealous and wanted to take him out. I mean, you see that all the time. You know, and he probably was very lonely.
I'm sure it got to
very
him.
Alone,
yeah,
I'm sure.
It really got to him. Yeah. Maybe even in a sense, the fact that no one came to rescue him from the situation at hand.
Yeah, and that is heartbreaking. You're so right.
He probably felt really abandoned. I would.
Yeah.
If none of my family tried to get me out of prison.
Yeah.
For someone no.
Well, no, if you ever end up in prison, I'll make sure to get your whole family down there to raise hell.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully nobody takes these puppies and like them. Okay. My eyes.
Oh no, I know. Like, that's so cool.
That part bugs me.
And I
so
hate that
much.
because it does use the verbiage gouged out, and you're just like, oh
just
my god. You know, and the fact that I was like, she put his head in her lap.
So they must have been, you know, like they're probably Netflix and chilling, and she's like, oh yeah, you can rest,
just
whatever,
fall asleep on my lap. Yeah.
He fell asleep.
And then she cut his hair. She took his string.
Don't trust the wrong people.
Yeah.
Guys,
girls and guys. It's not just about women here, okay? Yeah.
We support women.
We support.
Just not Delilah. She sucked.
No, Delilah is
she's not great.
Definition of a sociopath, but yeah. So.
But yeah, I think his story serves as a reminder to just us, or like at least like Christians, right? We can be so hard on our leaders, and to like have grace and always be like kind of praying for them, because he was leader of his people, And then he was constantly betrayed. And even though he's recorded as a man of faith in Scripture, and God obviously loved him and honored him to include him in Scripture, and he's very important to God's heart. But I think we had to see how painful his life was.
Even the prostitute.
It was just we had to learn that.
I didn't go into that, but the prostitute, she betrayed him as well. So I think Samson's
everyone was like out.
Story.
They were like everyone was out to get him.
Everyone
he was like the
always out
strongest
to get him.
warrior. Yeah, everyone was constantly out to get him.
So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this retelling of the Samson story. I know I certainly did, and maybe gave you some perspective or something you can take away for your own life. Overall message here: don't settle, especially for someone who is.
Don't give in to hopelessness.
Don't give in to hopelessness. Yeah. So.
Stay hopeful.
Yeah, stay hopeful. Again, this is Jesus Retold. We hope you guys tune in for next week, episode 2. Exciting story about a guy and his 2 wives.
Woo-hoo!
So we'll see what happens there. I'm your host, Bethany Brown, and this is my co-host, Amelia Linick.
Bye.
Bye.